I would honestly love nothing more than to see the two of them bang, if only because it means that literally anything is happening in this do-nothing story. Hello and welcome to Connotation Points Video Snark. If you came here because you thought that this was an audiobook, please stick around and maybe learn some reading and listening comprehension skills. I read books and discuss what went wrong and how they can possibly be fixed. I'm continuing my read-through of Funny You Should Ask by Elissa Sussman. Not the first video, go check out the others, links are posted below. Chapter 25. As they leave the theater, Gabe tells her that his plan is to have it open by the next fall. Channing thinks that it's an ambitious timeline, to which he replies that he's doing literally nothing else. This leads to him saying that following his viral argument with the Bond director, nobody wants to work with him. Never mentioned how that homophobe's career was ruined, only the drunk. Channing tells him that he should have said something anti-Semitic and called a woman a derogatory misogynistic slur. That Hollywood would have already welcomed him back by now, and I hate how accurate that this is. And just like that, we've once again sidestepped the conversation I'm not ready to have. And here's that dead horse again to tell Channing that she's been sidestepping having a healthy conversation for more than a decade. I'm already starting to doubt that she's even once thought about talking to a therapist, if I'm being honest. They go to the bookstore and his mom and sister co-own. I don't know what to tell you about it. It's pretty much every mom and pop bookstore that you've ever been in, but the narration pauses to tell you everything about it. Gabe says that when he does work there, he fills out the online orders. For some reason, this makes Channing embarrassed that he knows how many books she's ordered from their store over the years. We're introduced to Gabe's mom, Elizabeth. "We're so glad you're here," she says. "Gabe talks about you all the time." "We're just happy to finally meet you," she says. "I was starting to think Gabe would never get his act together." This isn't sweet. This is deranged. Gabe and Channing knew each other for 3 days a decade earlier. I'm not here for Elizabeth's creepy behavior towards Channing, and I'm starting to wonder if Gabe inherited it from his mom. Elizabeth shows her on the bookstore, although I'm confused as to what could possibly be said about a tour around a shop. Like, it's a bookstore. They sell books. Over here is the sci-fi section and so on. The only unique thing to be said is that they randomly named all of the shelves after famous authors of that genre. Up at the front is a section of recommended books, including some stuff Gabe recommends. To the surprise of literally nobody, the stalker and brown noser is recommending Channing's book. However, to me, it comes off as disingenuous, especially when you remember that Channing's supposed to be doing another interview with Gabe. And then because the situation wasn't terrible enough, Channing asks if Elizabeth wants any of them signed. Elizabeth agrees and says that she'll get some pictures. This entire thing is nothing but a marketing ploy. I think that I would have been way less angry over the entire thing if Elizabeth had straight up asked Channing rather than trying to tempt her to doing it. As Elizabeth goes to get a pen and her camera, Gabe tells her that he's read all of her books and thinks that she's a wonderful writer. For some reason, this turns Channing on. As Channing sends the book, she thinks back to the day that her first book came out. Jeremy convinced her that they should go from bookstore to bookstore and sign copies, except that only 3 shops in all of New York had them in stock, and even in those shops, they only allowed Channing to sign the books because they recognized Jeremy. It's one of my favorite memories of our marriage, but even then Jeremy had never looked at me the way that Gabe is looking at me now, with an expression of immense pride and awe. There is so much to unpack here, but as I bring out that dead horse for the upteenth time, I'm pretty sure that you know what I'm going to say. And then it somehow gets worse. It's the only reason you have a career at all. It being Gabe, the assumption that I'd slept with him, the tawdry nature of my article. Like, Jeremy didn't wake up the day of that party and decide to start harassing his wife about her relationship with Gabe. The fact that she stayed married to this asshole for several years is simply so baffling to me. Like, girl, did he blackmail you or something? Jeez, get a little self-respect, would you? It was one thing to ignore it when strangers online or shitty up-and-coming actors were telling me that I was an unprofessional lying slut. It was another when the person I'd slept next to every night for almost 7 years believed it too. Then why the fuck did you stay married to him for 7 goddamn years? As I keep saying, the only roadblock in Channing's life is herself. She keeps making poor decision after poor decision and then has the freaking audacity to wonder why her life sucks. Right as Channing is drowning in her own self-inflicted pool of self-doubt, Gabe's sister and niece Lauren and Lena show up. They all start to head out to have dinner at Elizabeth's place. In the car ride over, Gabe explains that he bought his sister this place after her husband died. He goes on to say that Lena was the same age he was when her dad died, so it was exceptionally difficult for him. He takes a moment to reflect that it's difficult to pull yourself out from an alcoholic spiral for other people. The need to get better must come from within. And I'm fine with establishing this, especially since these characters were introduced right now. But when this conversation stretches past an entire page, I start getting kind of ticked off about the entire thing. Like, I'm sorry that Gabe felt so out of control that he had to self-medicate with alcohol, but at the same time, not one single goddamn person was forcing him to be in the Hollywood scene. Much like Channing, his problems seem to come from within, and the only person holding him back is himself. Over the dinner, we're subjected to the awkward small talk that comes from only having been introduced to new people. Channing tries to connect with Lena, but is so awkward about it. When Lauren asks about Channing's writing, Gabe tries to flatter her by saying that she's such a good writer, she could write anything she wanted. Except that it doesn't come off as sincere. It comes off as a guy who's desperate to get into her pants. A bit after this, Lena's like, "Oh, you're that reporter who did the piece on Gabe." Lauren and Elizabeth try to stop Lena, but Channing says that it's alright. She goes on to say all of the rude things that people have said to her over the years. And here comes that dead horse again, but they would be correct. Channing's career does come simply because people think that she slept with Gabe. Her writing is miserable, and the fact that she literally got any amount of recognition from that article is, quite frankly, embarrassing from a societal standpoint. After telling Lena about this, Lena is like, ugh, whatever, and does a dramatic teenager storm rant, which is so much funnier when the storm rant is told from an adult perspective and we're not expected to sympathize with her. Lauren says that after her husband died, a lot of reporters called the house, and not all of them were nice. This is interrupted by the siblings getting a text at the same time. They beat around the bush for about half a page before finally getting to the point. Another actor named Ben Walsh went to check out the Philadelphia store he set and met Lauren. Ever since then, he's been kind of obsessed with her. Mercifully, Lauren does not seem remotely interested, especially with the way that Ben's been treating her like some prize to be won rather than an actual person. After Lauren leaves to check on Lena and Elizabeth gets offended by the entire Ben business, Gabe tells Channing that when Ben was on the set, he might have been flirting with Lauren, but he was fooling around with some other actresses at the same time. Gabe expresses disgust over that with zero sense of irony, considering he did literally the same effing thing. Gabe makes a comment that everybody else has left, so dinner is pretty much over at this point. Bonus chapter 28. Channing talks about her broken relationship with Jeremy. She freely admits that she stayed in that relationship for much longer than she should have. But at the same time, in the same breath, she also says that there was a reason why they were together in the first place, why she even contemplated marrying him. And I'm not talking about her broken, toxic relationship with Gabe. She talks about the routine that they fell into, how he'd get up at the crack of dawn, go into his office, and start hammering away at his typewriter. I can't even be surprised that this pretentious fart sniffer has a typewriter. The noise of this would creep into the still sleeping Channy's subconscious and transform into weird things like mice or a rocking chair and a wraparound porch. Then the two of them would have breakfast and she'd tell him about her dreams. More often than not, he'd somehow include her weird dreams into his writing. She said that Jeremy once called her his muse, that he thanked her in his first book for this. Channing said that seeing her being thanked in his book like that was more thrilling than her own publishers finally being out in the world, which, weird flex, but okay. Channing goes on to say that she knows that she's going to get zero thank yous or even a single mention in his next book, that his muse is now his new fiancé. Not like Channing blames his new fiancé for the end of Channing's relationship with Jeremy. She signs off her post with this note, but sometimes the conflict highlights that the country itself was founded on unsteady ground. It reminds me of something I once read. You shouldn't return to something simply because it's comfortable. I feel like after whatever the fresh hell happened between Channing and Gabe, which I'd like to remind you happened across literally 3 days, she ran back to her ex-boyfriend for comfort, that the two of them somehow ended up being married for close to a decade. And why did she do this? Again, because Channing didn't know what a good decision was, even if it came up and introduced itself to her. I did like the writing in this little snippet. It was really nice, but my problem is that the author has now had most of this book to make me care about Channing. And reading this only continues to highlight what I said a second ago. Channing does not know how to make good decisions. Like, am I supposed to sympathize with Channing because she stayed in a toxic relationship simply because it was comfortable? Chapter 26. As Gabe and Channing go back to his place, Channing keeps thinking about what's going to happen next, hoping that she knows exactly what it is. I would honestly love nothing more than to see the two of them bang, if only because it means that literally anything is happening in this do-nothing story. But if you're expecting my next verse to be, they bang, you're going to be disappointed too. Instead, we have to be dragged kicking and screaming into yet another trip down memory lane of the time that Gabe called Channing the day before he chucked himself into rehab, because this is what I really, really wanted to read about right now. The next 2 pages are nothing but Gabe being so drunk that Channy can barely get a word in edgeways. He talks a lot about the party, about Star Trek, stuff that the author has already beaten to death but still refuses to let go of. Plot? What plot? I'm literally almost to page 300 and not one single thing of value has happened. Not once this entire time. Channing tells all of this to Gabe in his car outside of his apartment. He says that he doesn't remember a single thing about any of that, which makes sense considering how drunk he was. But drunken Gabe had begged Channing to call him back. So she did, the next day after Jeremy left, but Jacinda answered and told Channing that Gabe was in rehab where phones weren't allowed. In the prison, Channy says that she only has one more question. Right before she hung up, Jacinda said, "Don't call again, Tracy." It has confused Channy to this day why Jacinda would have said such a thing. Gabe explains that he put Channy's number in his phone down as Tracy Lord, the character from Philadelphia Story. He shows Channy this, and the two of them crack up like it's the funniest joke in the world. But the problem is, it is in no way funny, to the point that me reading this super unfunny scene of them acting like it's high comedy is so awkward that it's starting to become uncomfortable. Because this is it. There are no more secrets, no more forgotten moments. I'm vulnerable and exposed, brand new, ready. I feel like I've missed something here because she told Gabe about his drunken phone call and asked who is Tracy, and then randomly decides that she's been born again? What is happening? Bonus Chapter 29. Today's article is about Channy's published book, but this one is more of an interview with Channy rather than a review. Channy expressed surprise that her interview went viral. I can't help pushing back on that a little. She didn't think writing about going to a premiere with a movie star and then passing out at his house the following night wouldn't be exactly the kind of story our celebrity-hungry culture would jump all over. I hate it when authors have enough self-awareness to point out flaws like this, yet not enough self-awareness to not have written it in the first place. But then again, we 100% would not be here if the author knew how to stop herself from writing terrible garbage. This event ends by asking Channy if she actually slept with Gabe or not. She says no, but then is like, I wish. Thanks for listening to my book Snark on YouTube. New videos are up every Monday, but stick around because I sometimes drop random videos on other days too. Just as a reminder, even if you can't financially support me, there are other ways to help me out. The first is watching this video as well as all my other videos. It's also important to like and subscribe. Finally, you can share this video with all of your friends so that they can help as well. If you're already caught up with all my videos, you can go to Tumblr for my main book Snarks, always free and updated every morning. And if you've already read all of my main Snarks, then you can find even more Snark on my Patreon. You can access it for $1 a month. Members also get early access to my main Tumblr Snark. Special thanks to Dawn, Phoebe, and Nikki for supporting me on Patreon already. If you want to hear your name in my video next week, either support me on Patreon or make a one-time donation. Do you like my Snark so much that you want me to Snark your rating? I do that too. For just $6 per chapter, I will tell you how awful that your rating is. But not to worry if you feel like you couldn't take the criticism. I also offer regular book editing as well, just $10 per chapter. You can contact me on any of my social media platforms if you have further questions. If you want to read some of the things that I've written, you can purchase my works on Amazon. I have a slew of erotic short stories and 2 full-length novels. I also frequently run flash sales on my stories, and if you don't follow me on any social media, you might want to do so just so you can know when I might be offering things for free. Links for everything will be posted below. See you next week, guys.